So, Montreux, Switzerland. Not Montreal, Quebec, Canada, but Montreux instead. Is a city that some people know mainly from Smoke on the Water, Fire in the Sky, that overplayed a death riff. Well, what if I told you that Colosseum performed there in 1969? Oh, what do we have on here? We have Mandarin, Buddy's Blues, The Time Machine, The Epic, The Valentine Suite, and then at some Reflet de Festival setting up in Mandarin. Now you're wondering, who is Colosseum? Well, they were arguably the premier jazz rock band that they've been described as bringing commercial acceptance of jazz fusion into the UK, because in America, of course, it was more popular. What with Miles Davis and then all the bands that were to follow, like the Mahavishnu Orchestra, Return to Forever, Weather Report. And you want to talk about bands that are just performing their behinds off with instruments where you're just like sitting back, you're like, holy smokes. Fiery playing. When Colosseum arrived at the Montreux Casino on the banks of glistening Lake Geneva, they doubtless felt a twinge of nervous excitement. It was April 25th, 1969. The upcoming British jazz rock group led by John Heisman was about to share a stage with some of the biggest names in the world. How would sophisticated European audiences react to their blend of musical idealism, blurred with the daring dynamism of youth? Would the wheel of fortune spin their way and land on 5,000 US dollars or be bankrupt? When the band made its debut at the Montreux Rolls Door Festival, the answers came quickly. An attentive crowd sat in front of the stage, listened respectfully, and delivered their verdict with loud applause. When the chips were down, the band's intricate arrangements, emotive songs, dynamic solos made Colosseum Live a unique experience. 1969 would prove to be a busy year for the band that consisted of James Litherland, guitar and vocals, Dave Greenslade, Hammond organ, Dick Hextall Smith, tenor and soprano saxophones, Tony Reeves, bass guitar, and John Heisman on drums. Nothing to do with the Heisman Trophy. Far in the previous year, they subsequently released 2 studio albums, Those Who Were About to Die Salute You and Valentine Suite. Outstanding tracks from those groundbreaking records were featured during live performances on the 2 trips to the glamorous Swiss resort. We are privileged to hear and see the excitement of their shows captured on the audio and DVD discs presented with this package is now the kind of time machine that Heisman conceived at the time of their creation. So let us slip back to that April day, when the band warmed up the crowds gathering in the venerable building on the lakeshore, where promoter Cloud Knobs, a funky Claude, unleashed his star-studded festivals. It's fortunate that Colosseum was filmed and recorded by RTS Radio Television Suisse, as it provides us with an insight into the development of the band during the early stages of a career that, despite occasional lapses and some upheaval, would continue well into the 21st century. I think even releasing an album this year in 2025. Here is the lineup with 19-year-old James Litherland singing and playing high-speed blues guitar, clad in a big black hat and complementing the equally commanding saxophone work of the late Dick Hextall Smith. However, the first number, Mandarin, is mainly a feature for the dynamic bass work number, original number Tony Reeves. James, preferred to be called Jim, says, I remember we did 2 gigs at the casino. We played at the Golden Rolls d'Or Festival in April that Claude Knobs was running. We didn't play in the casino itself. It was a casino hall within... It was a concert hall within the casino building. We did the Montreux Jazz Festival later in 1969. I remember us playing on a bill with Ella Fitzgerald. We stayed the night before when we went to see her perform. I hadn't long been in the band since, so I joined in the summer of '68, and it was brilliant. Before that, I'd been working in an office job I hated. So I walked out and saw an advert for a musician and melody maker. Within a week, I got a job with Colosseum. I auditioned at St. Matthew's Hall in the Elephant and Castle South Line, and I'll never forget the first rehearsals. My first day being in the band was early on a Monday morning, and we broke for lunch. We walked across a roundabout in the old Kent Road to a pub called the Bird in Hand. Then we went back to the rehearsal. I thought this was fantastic. This is my job, and I just loved it. The contrast between doing a proper job and this new life was dramatic. Colosseum did 2 albums in the same year I joined. I didn't write anything for those who are about to die salute you, but for Valentine's Suite, I wrote 2 or 3 songs, including Elegy, Buddy's Blues, and The Machine Demands a Sacrifice with Pete Brown. Pete was great with that. I'm still in touch with him. First tune heard here is Mandarin by Tony Reeves from the band's debut album, written using a Japanese scale. Did Jim find it hard to play? I had to work hard on it because it was quite difficult. I was out of my depth, really. Don't forget, I got the job as a singer. Originally, they had another guitarist, Jim Roach. When I turned up, they asked if I could sing, so I sang something and got the job as a singer. Reeves recalls how Mandarin became a showcase number. I remember thinking Montreux, prestigious gig for us to play, even though we were a long way from being a jazz group. But in later years, a lot more rock bands played there. Yes, I played a long bass solo, didn't I? Razor blade and some white sticky tape would have been in order on that one. I played a Fender Telecaster bass, which I subsequently sold to Stuart Copeland when we were in Curved Air together, and he used that in his home studio. Stuart Copeland, of course, with the Police. He badgered me for days to buy it, and in the end, I sold to him for a couple £100. I'm very pleased it's still being used by bass players on whatever Stuart is up to these days. I used a Gibson Maestro fuzz pedal with a bass, which oddly enough I recently sold to a fellow in Japan. Mandarin is based on a Hirajoshi soft scale I discovered in a book. As you ascend, there is one set of notes that changes as you descend it. So it's like C, D flat, F, G, B flat, C, and then on their way down is C, A flat, G, F, B flat. If you see what I mean, I really like the sound of it. During Mandarin, John's drums remain silent while Tony builds a somber, haunting theme. Dave Greenslade offers a supporting organ riff until suddenly the drummer unleashes his kit and the piece reaches a dramatic conclusion greeted by appreciative applause. John then announces Buddy's Blues as he explains as all about a young man from Manchester in England. We call him Buddy, and so is Buddy's Blues. What follows is a fine performance by Jim and his guitar wells, and he sings, "When I get home, I'm going to love you like nobody else has loved you before." Dick steps up to play tenor sax, which he supplements by simultaneously blowing a soprano sax, leading to a stop-time chorus emphasized by the drums and guitar. Jim wraps it all up with a passionate vocal, accorded loud cheers. Then the drummer steps up for a journey aboard the Time Machine, an extended solo with an astonishing array of percussive ideas delivered with all John's commands of both drums, rudiments, and a sleight of hand of a juggler. He incorporates four tom-toms, his snare drum, and double bass drums, not to mention an array of crash and ride cymbals and a series of swirling patterns and percussive themes. As he reaches a frenzied crescendo, it brings to mind the steam locomotive Mallard breaking the world speed record at 126 mph. What could only possibly follow this display? Only a performance of the Valentine Suite, the major composition devised for the band by John, Dick, and Dave Greenslade. Opens with a keyboard fanfare from Dave seated at his Hammond organ. He goes to devise a hypnotic blend of Bach-influenced classical and blues themes. Recalls Dave, the Valentine Suite came out in the early days as a complete album. We had to include it in our set because we knew what its audiences would expect. And this was one of our classic pieces. When I wrote the suite, my girlfriend at the time was a girl named Val. I came up with the title Valentine in 3 parts that include January's Search and February's Valentines. Dick and John came with a third section, the grass is always greener. That was a phrase we often use. The grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. Close-up shots of Greenslade flying his fingers and keyboard are represented by the spectacle of Jim and Dick devising their joint vocal and tenor sax to it before a high-speed guitar finale and a bow to the familiar theme of Procol Harum's A Whiter Shade of Pale, a such an emotional and physically draining piece. The band leader could barely summon the strength of gasp. We've enjoyed playing for you. Good night. Thank you. Certainly deserved the sunshine and chance to relax beside the casino swimming pool 2 months later in the summer of '69. They were filmed in June that year by the Swiss TV camera team. Clips of them setting up and playing Mandarin were included in the documentary Reflects to Festival '69, featured in our DVD. It's interesting to see John playing a much smaller Gretsch drum kit with a single bass drum that doesn't seem to bother him at all. If anything, the band's performance sounds tighter after having presumably played the arrangement many more times over the intervening 2 months. David Greenslade. We did an extra lunchtime gig outside, next to the swimming pool after the proper one. It was hot, and Dick Hextall Smith, being Dick, stripped off and dived in the pool. That was very rock and roll. Jim. We played Mandarin again beside the open air pool. It was all very loose, just like a big pool party. It wasn't like doing a gig. There were people milling around us. After the gig, I was standing at the bar, and a guy came up and invited me to his party. I said, "Okay, but what about the rest of the band?" He said, they were all coming too. So I said, "Okay, great." Then he asked if I could bring my guitar. He said he could give me a lift to the hotel to pick up the guitar as his car was parked outside. I said, "Well, where is it?" And he said, "It's in front of you." And it was a Ferrari, the type that you'd have to lie down inside. Turns out he was a 24-hour Le Mans rally driver. He was a member of a family that owned a mansion up in the mountains. That's where the party was being held. There were several floors, and each one was for hosting parties for different kinds of music, including jazz, pop, and rock. It was all very strange. When he took me in this road in this Ferrari, he almost drove so fast I almost frightened to death. It certainly provided Jim with a vivid memory of his time with Colosseum before leaving them after an American tour in 1970. He went on to form Mogul Thrash, an outfit that later transformed into the Average White Band. The historic recordings not only provide insight to the early days of Colosseum, but serve as a reminder of the atmosphere of this original Montreux casino. Sadly, the 19th century building burnt down in December 1971 during a performance by Frank Zappa's Void. It was an event witnessed by another great British group, Deep Purple, who were inspired to write their hit tune Smoke on the Water. The new casino was built in 1975, and the Montreux Jazz Festival continued to thrive as a Colosseum's unique music for decades to come. There were many changes of personnel, including the arrival of Dave Clemson, Mark Clark, and Chris Farlow, on the loss of founding members Heisman, Smith, and Barbara Thompson. For those who are about to play, we salute you. That's a lot of liner notes, but I like reading them. So, what do I think about the music? Madman, a Mandarin. A funky bass standard song, some Japanese-inspired grooves. It really is. You just gotta watch it. Buddy's Blues. Only one with vocals, surprisingly. A band that that descends into sax madness with the tenor and soprano. Holy smoke! Just the way how he's playing both at once, like. Jeez, like that. Time Machine is just a phenomenal freaking drum solo. I mean, the guy's just going all around, going. Keeping time. It's absolutely insane. Really big time jazz influence. Valentine's Suite, January Part. It's all a band in harmony, but that organ solo, holy smokes, with the blues and Bach influence. February is the two sax band returns, goes right back to the organ, and finally we got an amazing shot of the band just performing for the Eyes of March. One thing I liked about it, cameras just focused on the members. You know, they changed here and there. It wasn't like all the rapid fire edits or transitions or everything where every 10 seconds there's a jump cut. It's like, yeah, there's a little bit only after focusing for like 30 seconds on the performance. So yeah, highly recommended. Even though it's in black and white, this was completely remastered. The footage is great, sound is great. If you want to hear some jazz rock of the highest order with that's got some jazz technicalities but also freaking rocking hard, Colosseum live in Montreux, 1969.